Hi Ryan, thank you for your video submission. As I mentioned in my text reply, it was quite interesting to hear you go through, I think you did 5 different versions of your bass line, and it was really cool to kind of see what was clicking and which wheels were turning and what you were trying differently and your filtering process, so what ended up remaining. And that's the filtering process is so important. It's so important to just try a bunch of things, even if some of them or even all of them don't make sense, and even if it doesn't make sense for a really long time. Your stuff was starting to make sense, so I hope that you felt similarly. 2 things that I think would be really beneficial to explore are harmonic rhythm and melodic rhythm in your bass lines. And the harmonic rhythm is a little bit, well, very much connected to this idea you mentioned of, oh, what is the theory of it? I'm not sure what the theory might be. Might be interesting to explore how that intersects. So without, getting really nitty gritty and assigning labels to things, can you feel in your brain, in your ear, in your body, however you want to feel it, can you feel when there might be a chord change? If you're having trouble feeling it, a good sign is that if you're changing a lot of notes in your bass melody and many of them aren't working, chances are you could stay with one note for a longer time because that underlying harmonic rhythm is slower than what you're playing. And we got this in a comment earlier today, and I believe it was Ashley who said, I just realized that I like to make things more complicated than they need to be. Welcome to my life. And sometimes it's nice to just keep it simple and start off with 1 or 2 notes per bar, or even 1 note for longer than that in some cases. So that's about harmonic rhythm. And then melodic rhythm is the kind of more easily perceived rhythm, and that is quarter notes, eighth notes, pickups, etc. So I think that you can push yourself to graduate from quarter notes or pretty a standardized rhythm, and push yourself to use rhythm as one of your tools in your bass lines that you're exploring. So switch that up. We were talking about that in today's Zoom check-in, which I know that you watched the footage of, but it's so easy for us to separate rhythm and pitch, and I think that we'll get more out of it if we recognize that separation is a little bit artificial, and try to keep it integrated from the very first moments of creation of our bass lines. So I'll go back and play each of your bass lines one by one and talk a little bit more about them. So I think you heard that several notes in there were not making total sense with the bass line. So then I liked your second answer to that. I love the way that ends. So that was really nice. That minor second right at the beginning. Personally, I love it. I think for Bach, it might be too dissonant too soon. Your third is actually, I think, probably my favorite bass line, this third one right here. And in this one, you had more notes that were sticking with just the bare bones harmonies of D minor, which is usually what we can expect at the beginning of the movement. We could expect, different iterations of the D minor chord and the A major chord, which is serving as our harmonic upbeat to back to tonic. So a D minor and an A major chord are really good candidates to look out for at the beginning. I also really like ending on a works perfectly. Your opening there, that perfect fourth right at the beginning, that's also complex. Now, the history of the fourth is very, very, you wouldn't think so, of such an innocuous seeming interval, but it's really just ripe with strife and fights about, is it consonant, is it dissonant, how do we define it exactly? In this case, having a fourth over your bass, or a fifth under your bass for that matter, or it conveys a different tonality than our home of D minor. And Bach, it would be very unusual for Bach to do that. Fast forward a couple hundred years, sure, no problem. But for this experiment, I would stick, as I mentioned, with a simpler chord. And the fifth one is also one of my favorites. So anyway, you can kind of sense some themes in my reactions to each of your solutions. And again, I love seeing the playing around that you're doing with it. And for everybody, myself included, don't ever be afraid to give something that you don't consider absolutely completely polished, because that process is so valuable. We see a lot of only perfectly polished things, and we forget that there's so much trial and error behind those things, and so much, really long processes that go into reaching something that you're truly happy with in that moment, and that you might change the next day. So anyway, keep on going. I know I gave lots of examples to that particular movement, the Allemande of the D minor. So you can feel free to try some of them, play along, notice the different harmonic rhythms that are implied, notice the different melodic rhythms that I'm trying in my solutions. And don't be afraid, especially the beginnings of movements, to keep it nice and simple, especially for the first building blocks, and then letting your mind create and add things organically on top of that. So excellent work, and I'm excited to hear your next video.